Yes, so you're still watching Smart Means Business. It's exactly 9 minutes past 9. This is your daily kickstarter. Manju Barija here with Masi Katsime, and definitely we're driving you all the way. Definitely we're heading into the last hour of the show as we're going to be breaking down what has been happening throughout the week. Of course, the week has been quite busy with quite a number of events, business related, and all of them have a certain impact in the future for this nation. Well, before we proceed on that, still to remind you that the markets on the Zebo platform are already on. And you can participate by dialing *292#, which is simply the USSD code that will avail you with options where you'll be in position to actually buy government bonds and securities for a few 15,000 Uganda shillings. Now, the markets open at exactly 8:15 a.m. They'll be running all the way to 3:15 p.m. That is East African time. This is effective Monday up to Friday, apart from the weekends and the public holidays when those markets cannot be accessed. But of course, despite that, you have the rest of the days to capitalize and make money, something which I believe is quite key and important when it comes to your financial growth and development. As an individual, this is a reality for you, and that's why it boldly and confidently tells you, my money, my future. And Altex East Africa tells you, well, you got to do something new for yourself. Remember, it is 2023. Well, of course, we kickstart off with that East Africa Business Investment Summit that actually took place yesterday. As you were on ground, and I believe it was quite amazing reports.
Yes, yesterday was the first day of the it's called the High Level Business, East African Business and of course Investment Summit that is on the year 2023, and of course it attracted many numbers of people right there in the business sector, in the private sector, business and private, almost the same alike, and of course under the theme of the private sector driven regional integration for increased intra-Africa trade and investment. Well, you cannot bring in the private sector without the private sector of Uganda not being represented. Of course, PSFU, yeah, the private sector foundation in Uganda was there being represented by their very own Mr. Stephen Asimwe, and the CEO of PSFU, and of course African Bank, there was GS, there was Standard Chartered, there were quite a number of organizations that were there to discuss ways on how they can push this East African business, East African community, and of course the business and investment part of it. And many issues were actually highlighted. And of course, yesterday they were focusing on SMEs, startups, women and youth, and of course the main focus was actually on youth, because I mean we contribute a huge percentage when it comes to Africa. Youth are very many, 70% in Uganda are below 35. So that means that is the youth age group, 35 and below, and is the age youth group. And of course, they talked about technologies, innovations, different programs that have set in place so that they can push the youth to do something for themselves in lines of business, of course, and startups as well, and of course, technology, investment, and of course, they emphasize on the fact that the private sector has to play a big role in the East African community business part of it.
Yeah, very interesting. And I believe some of the aspects of discussions also actually included a one currency that is for the East African nations. But you see,
one currency, yes, they were proposing for one currency, but one currency.
Some of the key issues actually that are raised in that, because for nations to have a common currency, in most cases, when you first of all, for example, if we had to take a look at the European Union, the pound, the Swiss francs, and all those currencies that are used in between, if you look at the depreciation rate, it's almost in the same range. They're almost similar in value, which is not the case with Uganda in East Africa here, because it's largely volatile. The Kenyan shilling is way too high. Tanzanian shillings moderate. Ugandan shilling, oh my goodness, depreciating all here and there. The Sudanese, the dollar, and all that.
one of the things someone mentioned about panelists, having one currency to ease up trade, because if we want to trade within East Africa, we have to have one united currency. But anyway, they are looking for means on how they can do that. And of course, one of the challenges they emphasized on was the non-tariff barriers that is affecting business in East Africa.
Yeah.
We are divided, actually. That is what the Minister of East African Affairs, that is Honorable Rebecca Kadaga, hinted on. You know, we are talking about one currency. We are talking about, but we are forgetting that we are in different parts of the world. West Africa is having its own battles. East Africa is also having its battles.
Non-tariff barriers within the East African nations, right?
Yes, East African nations. And of course, she was emphasizing, she was saying before we go to the African integration, how about we first settle what is in East Africa first? Because it begins with us. It begins with the different regions, for the different regions to come together as a whole. That is what forms Africa. So definitely she hinted on it. Of course, non-tariff barriers, businesses being affected, then border points.
Border trade.
Yeah, border trade.
The cross-border trade.
At custom delays, at customs, registration and all. I believe it's supposed to be a free entry and exit of transport.
Somebody told me we've not actually yet experienced a full what we really call an integration.
We haven't.
In some sort of way, it's still in more discussions. If I still need a work permit when I'm in Tanzania, I still need a work permit to be in there. So that really shows you. I'm just giving an example anyway. I'm not dictating anything. So, but I believe with the East African passport, that is key. And probably that's one step towards the integration aspect. But I want to believe that this summit is actually going to open up more doors and an awakening when it comes to the different opportunities that actually we can exploit within the nations. I think that would also be a bigger picture.
One of the
opportunities within.
One of the moderators asked them, are you really talking with each other? Do you communicate? Is there communication
within the East African nations?
Yes, within the East African nation, the different entities. When it comes to the East African business part of it, do they communicate, or we just meet at the different summits and that's it? We just stop at talking.
Implementation and follow-up of what was discussed in the previous summits. That is a key. That is a key element to really look into as a result of that. But I believe one of the key issues here, I don't know whether it was addressed. I feel like the aspect that different East African nations have different commitments somewhere else. For example, I'm just giving an example, like how Tanzania is part of the COMESA, is part of SADC, East African community. So now there is this aspect, who should I pay my allegiance to, Uganda is part of East Africa community, COMESA and IGAD at the same time, Kenya, and rotating all the way. So the other question would be, where are you pledging your allegiance at? Trying to see how such, because at some point there is conflict in terms of policy amendment and the policies that are put out there, which I believe kind of hinders the performance of these, of the nations within the East Africa. Where are we committing everything at? Where are we committing everything at? I think that's one of the hindrances, because the reason why I was talking about one currency, when we talk about it's investors find confidence to invest in Europe because of the euro. So if we have that one currency that unites East Africa, I'm just assuming that is going to give it even much more power. We shall have much more, we collectively have a bargaining power, and we can start determining the value of that currency, not by gold, not to be backed up by gold, but simply by an opinion and a negotiation. Just like somebody sits in Washington and says today the dollar against the shilling will be 5,000. It can be dictated. It goes beyond the forces of demand and supply, but because of the value that you hold in the region and the quality of the service that you are giving out in the cross-border at a global perspective, it gives you that advantage. So That is why personally I think we need this one currency. That is for the East African nations. If we are to see the progress we've talked about, though the ultimate question is that who is going to really experience this? Is it us or the generations to come?
Of course, it will begin with us, then the generations to come.
No, it's not. Okay. Well,
I mean, you still have a lot of years. You still have like 50 years. So, I mean,
50 years ahead.
Yeah, 50 years ahead.
You see, like how the prophets prophesied Jesus in the Bible, but Prophet Isaiah talked about the prophet, the birth of Messiah, but he showcased it late after he died.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that is what actually happened at the high-level East African Business and Investment Summit 2023. Of course, discussions are still going on even today. There are going to be discussions. Yesterday, there were different panels regarding digital economy. There were presentations on investment opportunities in the East African community, and also positioning the private sector to take advantage of the African continental free trade area, which they put much emphasis on and mostly agriculture.
Agriculture.
Because I mean, Africa is known for having potential in agriculture. So if we could focus on that, and of course, coffee. You talked about coffee. You know how we're trying to add value, and of course, they hinted about something about value addition. We are having problems with market due to that fact that we do not add value to our products.
But you see, value addition, I would want to assume, okay, which is okay. But you see, with value addition, there are requirements that actually aid that. And I'm talking about the value addition infrastructure. Because I feel that is, because even though we talk about value addition, how can you add value addition when you're still using your hands to do something?
That is why they also emphasize on the need for technology.
Yeah. Innovations and so many more. Now that is the infrastructure we talk about. You know,
that is why they're emphasizing on startups, in startups and youth. You know, startups and youth have a thing.
Of course, majority
go hand in hand because they have the brains. They're active, so they could start up with things mostly doing technology. You know, so our brains have to be active because we are the ones to push this business West Africa further.
Okay.
We're to have the African integration that we dream of. Yeah, we're lagging behind because of the youth.
The youth.
The youth are lagging us behind. But of course, still we shall have more discussions today. Yesterday we were short of time, and of course discussions couldn't go any more. But of course, today you can join in and of course see if you are into business, if you're a trader. Most of the traders actually highlighted their grievances. That was the opportunity for people to convey their grievances, those that trade within East Africa.
Within East Africa?
Yeah. And of course, the issues of high taxes, there were issues of transportation costs. Yeah, someone was really you know, heartfelt, gave a heartfelt complaint.
A heartfelt complaint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that is it for the business summit.
Okay, now of course away from the business summit, which of course day one yesterday and day two today, and now of course still this very week, the Bank of Uganda projected that the foreign revenue reserves would rise to $4.4 billion in Uganda. Now, of course, we see the increase of the central bank actually says followed a rise in purchase of dollars, that is from the domestic money market, noting that by the end of June, it had purchased about $250 million from the domestic money market in a bid to rebuild the country's foreign exchange reserves. Now, the reserves are, however, expected to grow further. That is to at least 4.4 billion, that is US dollars, which would be an equivalent to import cover by June 2024. So you can see that. Now, Uganda's foreign, according to this report here, Uganda's foreign exchange reserve had reduced. That is to about $3.6 billion due to a number of factors, including the growing debt servicing and repayment amid difficult economic environment globally and domestically. Now, amongst this, you get to realize that you can probably, if I got a date in the dollars, and probably the rate at which I got that date, the dollar was a certain rate, probably at 3,700, and by the time I'm repaying back that date, that rate, the dollar rate is now at 3,800. Definitely, that is going to mean that I'm going to be, selling out more. I'm going to be spending more. I'm going to be paying the debt at a higher rate. That means there'll be a massive loss of the forex revenue. So these are some of the factors that are being really put across in there. Now, however, the reserves later increased to 3.8 billion in late 2022. Now, in a follow-up monetary policy statement, the Bank of Uganda also noted, in the follow-up monetary statement, the Bank of Uganda also noted that in 3 months to July, liquidity conditions had eased due to maturity, that is of the different government securities and purchases of forex for reserve build-up, which led to declines in interbank rates. Now, however, lending rates continue to rise in the quarter to June, reflecting tight monetary conditions, which forced that is interest rates to rise to 19.2%. That is from 19.18% in the quarter that ended, that is in March. Now, the current account deficit also widened to $3.7 billion. That is while the financial account surplus expanded by 9.1% to $3.2 billion in June. Now, during the period, the Bank of Uganda also recorded an increase in foreign direct inflows, boosted, that is, by the oil sector related investment and higher budget support inflows, but outflows persisted. That is, with the net exit amounting to $617.3 million US, which was higher than a net exit of $273.7 million the period ended, that is June 2022. Now, the central bank also noted that the lower project support disbursements on high debt service repayments had resulted into the overall balance of payment deficits, that is of $53.1 million US in the financial year 2020-2023, which was a reversal from a surplus of $191.3 million US in the financial year 2021-2022. So that clearly can portray for you a picture of what is happening in here for the economy. And this is great news. And the biggest picture in here is that you got to position yourself for you to experience this. How can you make a good use of the forex reserves that are in there for your own benefit? So for the forex traders out there, well, you can actually pick a leaf from that and see how best you can transact your business. If we have increasing foreign reserves from $3.8 billion to $4.4 billion US, what does that mean for your business? And what does it mean for looking at the traders that import materials from abroad to sell them at retail price in Uganda? That really can speak out something out there for you, and see how effectively you can go about that. Well, it's 28 minutes past 9. Still to remind you that the markets on the Zabo platform are on. You can kindly participate by dialing *292#, which is the USSD code that will avail you with options where you'll be in position to actually buy government bonds and securities for a fee of 15,000 Ugandan shillings. Now, as I speak right now, the market's already on, so you can participate in them by dialing that number. But also remember, on top of *292#, you have to register with your national identification number. That is for you to proceed efficiently. And that's why I made this a reality for you, as you can actually participate with ease. And regardless of where you're located, whether you're in the east, west, south, you can still buy this bond of securities. Regardless of whether you have a smartphone, whether you get a button phone, you still have to you can participate in these bonds and securities. And that's why Zabo, with ultimate confidence, comes out and says, "My money, my future." And Altec East Africa clearly tells you that you gotta do something new for yourself. Remember, it is 2023. Well, now Smart Means Business takes a break, and I shall be returning to wrap up the week.